Well, welcome to Music Theory Zero, Lesson 2. Today we're going to look at three simple things. We're going to look at what are notes, and then we're going to look at what are different notes, and then we're going to look at what is the combination of these different notes, and how can we start to make something that sounds slightly beautiful. So first of all, what are different notes? I like to start on, the lowest note of the piano. I mean, why not? Right? You got about 88 keys on this thing. I mean, my camera can't really fit all of them at the same time right now, but if we start down here, there's the lowest, and then at the top is a C's. I was actually thinking earlier about how, almost no one uses music that's down here. The reason why is that it's just not distinct, because when you're down here and you try to do a little melody, let's see. It works better up in the higher ranges. So, I don't know why I'm talking about that, but yeah, those are the low frequencies. I was, though, trying to compose something that used them. I think it's going to be a concerto. I have a colleague of mine who has challenged me, and we also tried to challenge our other colleague who's a freshman, well, now a sophomore, to write a concerto, and we're going to see how that goes. But basically, this is the origin of notes. Honestly, as long as anyone can remember, humans have been singing. But in ancient Greece, I think it was, there was this man named Pythagoras, and he got the smart idea that, these different notes probably have different ratios or whatever. And he's more so known for his geometry. Some of you might have heard of, the Pythagorean theorem, which I actually have forgotten already. It's only been a couple of years. But long story short, he discovered that if you take the ratios, let's say like a 4 and a 5 and a 6, like the ratios that those have together, what you get is a sound that's somewhat like this. The reason why it's not exactly like that is because that's an approximation. Basically, if you actually want the pure ratios, you're actually going to be out of tune with the other notes in the chord, it's very sad. But they had to make a compromise by making what's called just intonation, not just intonation, equal temperament intonation, where everything is tuned as close as possible to what would sound very nice and pleasant. And it's a standard tuning. We didn't used to back in Bach's days, they didn't even have that. And that's like just 400 years ago. But your guitar, your piano, your banjo, if you use a tuner, it's always usually going to be in equal temperament tuning. So that is what notes are. An even more basic way of what notes are is if we take its frequency, it's how often a sound is happening. So let's say we have, let's go to the trumpet, for example. When I was younger, I used to pretend to be a motorcycle. Sometimes. Not to be one, but to emulate one. And it would start with or that's a car. But anyways, I make sounds like that. What's happening there, which is very interesting, is you have the regular recurrence of a sound, but it's happening so fast. So let's take, for instance, that sound of the vocal cords just slapping together, right? They're happening. It doesn't sound like a note, but if I speed it up, and as I speed it up, it becomes a higher pitch. And that's basically what frequency is. So like 1 hertz would be 1 time every single second. Every single minute, which is very, very slow, and you don't even hear it as sound. Yeah. Next up, what are different notes? So we have what one note is, and then we have the relations between them. But this is where we start to have what are called intervals. So the intervals in equal temperament are the unison, which is the same note, which isn't very applicable on a piano, but if you get two vocalists to sing together in unison, you get a certain texture that would be different if it was just one vocalist. But on the piano, we can't do that, so we're just unison. Then we have a second, which is one whole step up. So a whole step would be 2 keys. So 1, 2. That's skipping one, though. The next one would be a minor second. Honestly, I'm going into far too much detail for all of y'all right now, but we have the minor second, we have the major second, then we have the minor third, then we have the major third, and then we have the perfect fourth. Now, the perfect fourth is interesting because all of these intervals are based off of the play between tension and release, which honestly is quite insane that that's how it works. But the fourth kind of just sits there. I mean, it doesn't sit there. It's actually very, very dissonant to the ears of the 13th century counterpoint writers. It wants to go somewhere. The pull and the push. So the minor second wants to go to the 1. The second wants to go to the 3rd. The minor 3 wants to go nowhere. It just sits there. Then after that we have the tritone, which is the almost equal division of the octave here. Originally called the Devil's Interval. Not really originally called that. Then we have the 5th, which really can just sit there. And then after that we have the 6ths, the minor 6ths. And then we have the major 6ths. The major 6th, I always thought it was very sad. And the other one was happy. But actually this one's sadder. In context, it all depends on the context. Then we have our 7th. And we get this in our jazz, on our blues music. And then we have the major 7th. There's our jazz chord. And then the octave, which is the unison, but actually an octave up. And then with these intervals, we can combine intervals on top of intervals to make what's next, chords. But stay tuned for next time for Music Theory 0, Lesson 3, chords.